Okay,
Right.
it is Thursday, February 23rd, and I am here with you live, Councilmember Carol Fife, here to discuss some of the things that are going on in the city of Oakland and at City Hall. And you all know I come with regular lives and regular check-ins, and it's an opportunity for me to connect with the community. And I'm here to answer questions if I possibly can. And tonight we're going to deal with kind of a heavy topic, and it's not about personal safety, but it is around overall safety in the city of Oakland. It's something that we're challenged with, and it's something that we're also dealing with inside of City Hall and in politics in general. If you all have been paying attention, or if you've seen it on the news, you'll know that I recently did a press conference about an uptick in violence and harassment towards women elected officials. On Martin Luther King Day, I posted to Twitter some of the messages that I've received on voicemail, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. I've received several emails and you know emails, phone calls, voicemails. Right now, the city system is down, so I'm not getting as many of those. But I just really wanted to talk with you all about that because once again, this is not about me specifically as a person. It really is about us. It really is about the climate that we're living in right now, where politics are becoming more and more polarized. We're seeing people who don't feel like they have a voice in the political process getting angrier and angrier, and it's leading to a very contentious climate, not just in Oakland, but around the country. We've recently seen that there were two city council members who were killed in New York, more that are harassed throughout the state of California that are threatened with death. I just got a call yesterday about several women that have expressed concern about some of the messages that they're receiving. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that today and what we can do around the real life targets and the real life incidents that people are experiencing, because um, it's serious and we have to take it seriously. So I have a quick slideshow that I want to run through with everybody, and then we're going to talk about community safety and how we can look out for each other. So I do not see the screen, Jyoti. Hold on. There we go. Violence and harassment on the rise in local politics. Next slide. So when these things were coming up, several individuals reached out to me, and I also found resources in my attempt to try to find solutions for the issues that were coming up. And I found that Princeton did a study with the Anti-Defamation League that showed that policymakers are experiencing an increased uh, amount of threats. And I won't say the administration that this type of climate has exploded under, but I think you all know there's one presidential administration that glorified violence and encouraged violence, and that is trickling down through the base of individuals that resonate with a certain type of message. And we're starting to see that not just in right wing spaces, but also in California. And I want people to be able to point it out when they see it. And the study that was done by Princeton showed that 42.5% of all threats of public officials was disproportionately experienced by women of color, and more specifically, Black women. And that has its history and roots in the way that Black women have never been seen as being human, or have been devalued as whole and complete beings since Africans were brought here in chains. And so that has a lot of carryover into just the history and legacy of white supremacy in this country. Next slide. So some of the real life targets. This woman was killed in New York. She was a council member that was shot when she was returning home, and it was terribly, terribly, just devastating. And this goes to show that violence does not have a party. This woman was a Republican lawmaker, and she was gunned down um, at her home. And it just shows that violence is something that is inescapable, but specifically something, once again, that Black women experience greater than ever. Um, Next slide. And a lot of times that when we bring up these issues, it is always baffling to me that some of the same rationale for people saying that violence is expected or should be expected is that people in public office are targets, and it's justifiable. And one of the reasons that is given is that, well, you decided to run for office, you decided to take this position, so it's kind of what you get. And it's very similar to the arguments that you hear from individuals who are sexually violent. I know a lot of sexual abuse survivors that have been told that, well, if you weren't wearing that skirt, then you wouldn't have received that outcome. Or if you dressed different, or if you looked different, if you carried yourself in a different way, then those things wouldn't have happened to you. You're asking for it. And it's the same kind of vibe that I'm hearing when it comes to people who say, well, you're in a focus, you're in the public eye, so it's kind of what you get. And it's not just Black women, it happens to everybody. It's like this all lives matter approach to even speaking up and saying, hey, we should pay attention, things are getting serious. This is something that I've been talking about for years, since I took office in 2021. And these are just some of the responses that come on Twitter about how I should react to the harassment of not just me, but my colleagues and my colleagues throughout the country. Carol, you sound green in this area. I've been getting death threats and harassed online since I was 25. Grow up and stop whining. Once again, it's that same kind of misogynist, dismissive attitude, like, get over it, stop crying, stop talking about it, suck it up. And it's interesting because some of the same individuals are like, you're making this up. This is not real. It's an abusive way to look at calling out and not accepting some of this behavior. Next slide. Once again, you're lying. This isn't real. This is karma. It's what you get. Often common refrains when it comes to just making visible what these attacks are. And there's another. This is so funny because a lot of the individuals I don't really terribly pay attention to, but you don't know who's listening. You don't know when these ideas are ginned up around the karma that should be happening, or the justification that harassment is okay. If it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone, and we're seeing more and more of that. Um, but some of these folks all run in the same circles. They all post together. You can tell that it's a coordinated attack. And when I was responding to one of my constituents around doing something around Black female mortality and how many Black women die in childbirth and how many women of color in California aren't served by the medical industry. Even that is met with this type of, glad to see Fife spending her workday focused on something that happened in Southern California. No, this is happening right here in Alameda County. And Alameda County medical professionals are have reached out to me around doing something about it or bringing attention to it. And you can see the dismissive anger and frustration and hostility that is met with even just bringing up issues of real concern to a segment of the population that doesn't get to be human, that doesn't get to talk about the issues that impact them. And inside Black History Month, we still can't bring up Black issues. We have the shortest month of the year and can't talk about issues that impact Black women. So once again, it gets back to the deep-seated misogyny and racism towards women of color, specifically Black women, in this country. And I spoke in the press conference around how sports is deeply intertwined with what happens with me and some of the reactions to me. Um, and this is specifically prevalent when any conversation about the Howard terminal comes up. And this tweet that's at the bottom that talks about Howard terminal owners moving this multi-billion-dollar owned franchise to Las Vegas, um, is another example of what I'm talking about. So this gets announced, and you're caring about doulas. No, I care about death and Black women dying in childbirth in one of the most wealthiest nations in the country, and I'm caring about this as we all should care about it, particularly in this month as we lead into Women's History Month, so we can bring attention to an issue that is extremely problematic and something that we should try to root out in the healthcare system. Next slide. So people often wonder why I talk about race so much and why I focus on race. And it's because I don't believe this country ever got it right when it comes to race in America. There's been no real reconciliation or repair of the harm done to our in Native American population, our First Nations people that were here before the Mayflower. There's been no real reconciliation about making things right, because if we're talking about making things right, we're talking about giving land back. We're talking about making sure that people have access to what was taken away in terms of natural resources. We're also talking about ongoing barriers and oppression and suppression that happens with these same individuals, our natives, Black folks, brown folks, our Asian siblings that were interned. There's so and poor white folks. I don't want to leave out poor white folks. When I was a delegate for Bernie Sanders in the 2016 um, election season, I went to around the country in certain places around the platform that we were supporting, which was a more robust and inclusive platform for working class people. And I met folks from Appalachia and the experiences that even poor white people have, which is something that Chairman Fred Hampton talked about, is is also egregious. And capitalism, especially race-based capitalism, devours everyone, even individuals who are not, um, you know, necessarily thought of as an oppressed class. So I'm sharing all this to say that in one of these tweets, you can see where it says that they're calling Angela Davis a colonizer because recently Henry Louis Gates said that one of Angela Davis's ancestors came over on the Mayflower. So that by some stretch of the imagination makes Angela Davis a colonizer. So you can see that a lot of these things are ridiculous, but the point of me raising them and raising them so consistently is for a few reasons. Number one, it creates protection. Awareness creates protection. And I'm going to say that again because that is the truth for all people seeking safety. Awareness of your surroundings, awareness of who your neighbors are, awareness of um, the environment is part of creating safety. So when I'm calling it out not just for myself and my colleagues because of the work that we're doing, but also because it's something that people should be aware of in their everyday lives. That bringing attention to a situation, either through letting people know, awareness through lighting in your environment, um, awareness by just paying attention to your surroundings, whether that be not leaving things in your car. All of those things are about situational awareness. And that's one of the reasons that I'm consistently vocal about what's happening. Another reason is because it's important for people to understand that in this climate, we're still at war with a status quo establishment that wants things to continue as they've continued for years. And if we're not able to point out the ways in which they move, then we'll keep getting duped. It'll make our victories and our successes a lot harder to achieve. So, what I mean by that is that it's important to know what and who I am opposing, or what and whom I work for as an elected official. And for far too long, there has been an elected base that is willing to serve those who have versus those who have not. The reason why we have haves is because of the resources that are extracted from the people who are working really hard. Even homeowners in Oakland are some of the most highly taxed individuals in Alameda County, and a lot of that extraction, especially for working class people who are not making living wages, goes to people who are not really interested in some of the same things that I'm interested in. And you can see what my policies are in terms of making sure that we have housing that is available to all people. And I passed the rent cap. What year is it? 2023. So it was in 2021. Um, Reimagining public safety so that we can also focus on investing in prevention versus only investing in punishment. We've seen that only punishment leads to an increased prison system, increased numbers that are behind caged walls and not rehabilitated, and then come out in a situation where there's fewer resources than when they went in. But you also see um, a starved educational system. So where our public education is not resourced with the funds and tools that they need to educate young people. And I always go back to how education, because I'm a former teacher, and I cannot tell you how many classrooms I've been in where teachers and schools didn't have access to the basics, which is like pencils and paper, and you're going into a system where people are overworked. So I'm bringing all of that up because the systems that I'm working to change and turn inside out have individuals who have been a part of those systems for decades, and they don't want to change. The systems are in existence because it works for someone and it just does not work for the masses. So a lot of the antagonism that is now trained on me is because I represent a diversion from what has existed. And that is why I continue to bring up some of these issues, because if they're able to target me and get me out of the way, then it starts to chip away at the progressive progress that we've had that will eventually, I hope sooner than later, start to change some of these things. And we've been able to do some pretty dynamic things with the city council that is currently seated right now. And now with the new mayors, we've seen with Fitzgerald Park, things are moving faster and more positively for District 3 as well. And so you've got to know when those things are happening, there will be oppositional forces that try to destabilize and discredit what's happening. And that is currently being done through me. And so they will do that through either violence or coercion. And so a lot of things are happening right now in order to change that. So next slide. Or is this the last slide? So once again, I want to summarize by explaining that a lot of the things that you're seeing that are happening in the media about me and safety are my effort to inform the community that it is not just me that's under attack. It is me as a figure or a representative of what we are trying to do. Progressive change is not easy. And when I say progressive, I'm not talking about the label of a progressive versus a conservative. I'm talking about progress, like moving forward. We had to fight to get here. And you've got to know that there are efforts that are trying to reestablish all of the uh, processes and systems that were lost over the last several years in this fight to create a more equitable city government. And so this is not about me. it's about me in as much that I represent you and I represent a a new way of doing things. I represent a new vision. And so as long as I am trying to move against the grain and do things differently to make housing a human right, to make sure that there's pay equity, to make sure that we look at race as a factor and why the conditions specifically in West Oakland are as they are. That is the problem. The policies that I'm pushing are a problem to some people. And I guarantee you, it's a small fraction of people, but yet and still, it is a powered and resource group of people. And so we've got to know that. And I know, Kit, I know you support and have my back. And um, it's going to be time to organize. We are headed back into City Council at in March. We actually have a meeting next week. Um, where the rules committee will be in chambers. And so I'm a target because I represent what you all want me to represent. And so we've got to organize and make sure, and I got to make sure that you all know that. But I also need to let you all know that this is not subjective. This is not personal. It is political. Folks take issue with the fact that I say everything in Oakland is political, and that's because it is. If you think about the factors of, and thank you, Shay. I know y'all got me. Um, the factors behind what propelled me to office and the conditions that currently exist. The status quo establishment will create chaos to restore order. That is what disaster capitalism is, creating chaos to restore order. And you can see that the primary individuals that are stirring up this chaos are all organizing together. Sometimes they try to throw a rock and hide their hand, but if you look closely enough, you can see that a lot of these folks are working together. This is coordinated. And I one of the things I wanted to ask you, thank you, Colleen. Thank you. Thank you for being there. And thank you for saying that. Colleen says, thank you for all you do. I'm really just reflecting what it is that you all want me to do. And that is to work on a local level to try to change the conditions. And sometimes that just means highlighting the contradictions. One of the contradictions is that um, we have been told, and I'm talking about the movement, we have been told that if you all just knew how to engage your local government, if you all just engaged properly and respectfully, then you wouldn't have to uh, protest. You wouldn't have to do marches. You wouldn't have to have rallies. Just learn how to petition your elected official. And so we started doing that, and our needs were ignored. We were told that, okay, well, if you don't like the system, if you don't like who's in office, run, engage the democratic process and run for office. And so we've done that and have been obstructed up until, this new administration have been obstructed for the last 2 years. And so we've done that and are trying other things. Don't take your safety into your own hands. Call the police. Well, just to cover bases, we've done that too. I made a police report about the primary individual who has been harassing me, and nothing has happened as a result. So my question to the public is, what do you do? What do we do when we are all that we got, when we're all that we have? What systems of safety can we set up? And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about and I wanted to discuss, because once again, this is about a larger political objective to destabilize movements, to destabilize and discredit leaders. It's a tactic of COINTELPRO. I talked about that in the newsletter, and it is tried and true, and it's something that has been used against civil rights organizations and Black power organizations. And I'm going to do that in just a second. But it's something that is still happening today. What do we think happened when individuals that were leading transformative change movements in the United States were taken out, for lack of a better word? What do we think happened with those structures and programs like COINTELPRO? What do we think happened after their objectives were achieved? Do we think they just went away? Or are other code names and other programs and projects used to discredit and destabilize transformative movements? Because now segregation in our public schools is more rampant than it was in the 1950s. Wealth inequality more rampant than it was when these movements were at their height. Um, Individual instances of police violence have increased and were increased in 2022 more than the previous 5 years um, that we have recorded incidents of police violence. So I'm saying that the conditions that need to be addressed, the conditions that need to be changed, still exist. And there are still people fighting for this change. And what do you think will happen to the change makers? You think that they're just going to be allowed to just go about their lives, and you think that I'm just going to have a free reign to say, hey, we need to tax the rich, we need to make housing a human right, we need to um, eliminate the carceral state. There's so many things that need to change, and there are people making, fighting for those changes, and those individuals are still under attack. Sometimes it's covert, sometimes it's overt, sometimes it's outright violence, but you need to know it when you see it so that we can organize effectively against it. And so I just want to say again that they're attempting to put me in a box and bait me into situations that create uh, situations that I have to react to. And we're going to be smarter than that. We're going to be able to call out, and I want you to be able to call out when you see these things happening, because folks like Sam Singer, who still have an issue with me about Moms for Housing and causing their boss to have to pay uh, uh, a settlement for how they engage with renters and tenants across California. There, folks are mad. Folks are still mad, and I know Sam Singer makes a lot more money than me. And there are also folks talking about, sending people to my house and camping in front of my house to harass me on a regular basis. This is not just happening to me, and I just want you all to be able to know what's happening and to be able to see it so we can organize effectively. And one of the things that I think it's also important to note is that you all deserve to be safe too. And safety for me is more than just about your physical self and your ability to be free from incidents happening. Safety also means access to affordable housing, access to healthcare, physical and mental health care, access to productive education, access to good paying jobs. And that's the reality that I want to create, a vision where you don't have to be wealthy to have access to what life has to offer. And that's, I think, the role of government is to create the space that doesn't cater to the haves because they have, but it actually creates the systems and structures for everyone to thrive. That is my goal. And if anybody tells you anything different, that is some woke agenda, then I would be woke. I've never used that term in my life, but if it means equity and justice, then that's what I'm fighting for, and that's what I'll continue to fight for. One of the things that I did want to bring to you all is CPTED. It's crime prevention through environmental design, because I know there are a lot of people in Oakland right now who don't feel safe. And I want to acknowledge that. And I want you all to know that I hear you. And we're working on what you do when you feel like you're alone, when you feel like you're not safe. And once again, situational awareness is really important, because the police don't come. And who comes if you are in a situation you're calling and you get put on hold for an indefinite amount of time if you're experiencing an emergency? Um, and right now, that is something that we have to collectively think about, because, as I've said in the past, there's no way for us to hire enough officers, even if you want police, if you believe that police are the answer to crime. I don't believe that. But if you believe that police are the ultimate answers to addressing what's happening on the streets, then there are still not enough dollars in our coffers, and there are not enough people that are going into the profession of policing to deal with the level of incidents that we are experiencing in our city and throughout the country. In Oakland, we would have to have a police officer on every city block, on every corner, to be able to preemptively address what might happen. And even I've heard from some of my constituents, especially in business corridors, is that there will be officers on the block and there will still be a restaurant or a business that gets its door smashed, or cars that get broken into with police right there on the block. So that is something that we have to talk about and have really tough conversations about. Right now, OPD says that they're focusing on violent crime, but I'm hearing from constituents that it's now nonviolent crime that needs to be addressed, because that they often turn into violent incidents. So what do we do if we don't have the budget nor the bodies to put someone on every single corner inside of the existing system that we have? Because we've got to deal with what we're experiencing today. And if there's someone that has the answers, I want to have those conversations. In the meantime, we've got to figure out, how do we keep people safe? And that in our neighborhoods, that means knowing who your neighbors are, being vigilant, paying attention to what's going on, activating space. Because the reality is, there are people who will take advantage of you in this world. I don't want to see it that way, but that is the truth. And we can't not talk about the reasons why that is. The trauma, the deep trauma that goes into the root causes of why certain individuals are filling up our prisons, why certain communities are poorer than others. That has its origin. And if we don't deal with that, then we'll keep reproducing the outcomes that we see. So we need a long term plan, and then we need an immediate plan. So we can't divorce the solutions from each other. We need both. And the systems that we have right now, we don't have the community based uh, structures to address those issues. We're building it. We are building it. We are investing in it, but we don't have a fully fleshed out system right now. So it really comes down to how well we're going to look out for each other. One of the ways that we are doing that in the city of Oakland is through CPTED. I just mentioned that, but CPTED is crime prevention through environmental design, and that is paying attention to um, what is going on in your environment. And sometimes we can create space in a way that addresses some of the um, features that would enhance incidents taking place. Like if you design a building and you have lots of corners without lighting, those tend to be more dangerous spaces. It's similar to how they built projects when they were building projects in the 50s and earlier, to house just like hundreds and hundreds of people on top of each other. Oh, the way that those buildings were designed gave pockets for people to hide, pockets for individuals to be ambushed. It's not the safest place. But if you design spaces that have a certain type of lighting, have a certain type of design and open flow, if you have bushes that can be cut down, and um, different things, and just the arrangement of space, that can also limit incidents where you can be impacted. And the same thing for leaving items in your car or in your trunk. Those are some of the ways to just be aware of what's going on in the environment. But the city of Oakland does have specialists who do those CPTED walks and analyses with businesses and residences. And so I don't know if we dropped the link, but we should give the link to how the city can work with organizations and individuals to do these CPTED walks. And I would be happy to go with any community group or residential group who's interested in doing that for their neighborhood. And there are also community organizations that support in instances where people don't have access or want to call our traditional systems of safety or so-called safety. And so we know we have community groups like the Anti-Police Terror Project, who run a program through called MH First. It's mental health first, and they address some of the issues when it comes to leading with mental health, so that police aren't aren't needed to be called. We have our macro program that's also working with that same understanding. And we have several community ambassador programs all throughout the city that are providing alternatives to policing that people can reach out to. And I'll put a list to those organizations on my website. But I did want to alert you all to reaching out to our SEPTED program and reaching out to my office at District 3 at oaklandca.gov if you are a District 3 residential or commercial district that wants to do a septet analysis. We can organize that. We can connect you with the right officials in the city so we can do those things. But I didn't want to spend a lot of time because I honestly don't like talking. And even less than that, I don't like talking about myself. And that's why I think it's important to put this in the realm and in the context of the political fight that we're under. We struggled to get where we are in terms of being in this office and to having a majority on the council. So now the attack is to discredit and to destabilize. And that comes in several forms. And I'm going to start calling it out because being quiet about it doesn't stop the attacks. It just doesn't. So we're going to continue to be vocal, regardless of all of the naysayers, all of the individuals on Twitter who have something to say, who didn't support me either way. I'm still going to work to make the district safe, and I'm going to make sure that what I was called to do in this seat continues, and that's just the fact. And I'm going to take some of the statements because I see that there was a lot in the chat. So Jyoti, help me out and throw them on the screen so I can see them again. Oh, the attacks are all on Black women on the council. Well, I am not clear that that's true. I know what I'm experiencing is definitely targeted, and I've talked to some of my council colleagues who said that they haven't experienced what I've experienced. They have experienced, the run of the mill name calling and different different ways that people can harass elected officials. But the straight up just misogyny and misogynoir, quite frankly, is unique to what I'm experiencing right now. But there are women throughout the state of California, Northern and Southern California, that are experiencing more similar things. But once again, it is because of my politics. Please believe me, it is because of my politics and my ferocity in fighting for what I believe in and what you all believe in. So I can't say that it's all the Black women on the council. Colleen Cummins says that they are all from men. Some of these men regularly threaten folks in our community as well. That is a fact. And I think that is clear. And that's why, honestly, I have a hard time um, taking support or feigned support from individuals that are like, we support Black women. But I'm like, your dude is the problem. Don't talk to me. Don't tell me you support me. Grab him up, talk to him, get him straight. And I think it's also important to state that one of the ways that they justify this type of targeting and this type of harassing is saying it's their First Amendment right. I tweeted about it a few days ago, and they intentionally misconstrued that tweet to say that I was justifying violence. I'm saying no, it's all in writing that you all are saying that I should expect and should just take the responses that I'm getting and the harassment that I'm receiving because it's people's free speech right to do so. It's very clear what that statement meant. And the fact that that's even being taken out of context to say that I'm justifying violence is another example of the gymnastics these folks go through in order to justify their behavior. But once again, I can never overstate that this is because of the politics and the political viewpoints that I have. And if they can destabilize me, if they can take me out, then they can stop this progressive movement forward to change some of the systems that are in desperate need of a rehaul, if not a complete just tear down. We got anything else? on here, Josie. Heading to the 22X and NC meeting. So that's the formerly known NCPC's Neighborhood Crime Prevention Councils, which are now just neighborhood councils, meeting now to highlight this very issue. Thank you for the added layers, which I will share tonight too. Neighbors must rally around this new vision. We all win. We all win when we are pushing for uh, solutions that center people. When we learn how to talk to people, we are actually regressing as a nation in our ability to have conversations. It is indisputable that race and class are systems to keep people in certain spaces, keep people from moving forward. And I'm trying to break down those barriers through legislation. And that is making some people very unhappy. Jyoti, we got anything else? How do we call people out or have a conversation? I prefer to call people in, honestly, to have these internal conversations. But I want you all to, that's a great question. I want you all to check out this documentary I watched some years ago. It just came on PBS, but it's called The Spies of Mississippi, because it outlines one of the other methods that wasn't COINTELPRO, but it was a method that was used to destabilize political movements. And I bring it up because some people you cannot call in, you cannot call out because they have a mission and they have an objective. And I think we need to be able to discern what that is. And so we need to have some call in meetings for people that we do feel could be talk to, or we could work with, even if we have differences of opinions. But there are some people that are sent to do exactly what they're doing. There are some people who are on the payroll to do exactly what they're doing. And we've got to be able to identify who's who, because some people really are just angry. They feel like they're not getting city services, or that they're losing their place in the social hierarchy. And sometimes we can talk to those folks. Sometimes we cannot, but we've got to be able to identify if these folks are paid and on a mission, or they're just wanting to see things different in the community. So that's important. um that exactly, Carol. Some people cannot be called in or out. Identify them, then protect your peace. You got to protect your peace. And they know that if I'm constantly in crisis, it's difficult to create peace even for you all. um and it's important also to know the roles in city government, because I can create legislation that has to be implemented, but that doesn't necessarily create the systems that we need to keep each other safe. Yeah, some people you can't call in or out. Shout out love to Sharina. Love you, Sharina. Good to see you. Jason Toro, you're speaking the truth, council member. Thank you for shining a light on this issue. And thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jason Toro, for saying that. I know someone very close to you has experienced a lot of this same type of energy that has not deserved it. And so sending love to Liz Ortega, who always shows up in support, especially of women of color. I see Samira Kareem. Shout out to Sam, who's always also been a sister comrade fighting for other women, to keep other women safe and housed. So shout out to you too. Um, I don't know. We're going to keep on paying attention. And I know there are a lot of people out there who don't want to see a bunch of drama. That is not the way that we get to solutions, regardless of whether you like me or not. How is this division serving the objectives of our community at large? What policies am I promoting that are divisive and tearing the community apart? And I mean that. Let's have conversations about it. But if your goal is to call me names and to um, try to intimidate me um, with guns or the other ways that you do that, how is that helping the overarching objective? How does that help you towards your goal? And so it's important that we ask, and we keep asking, how are your tactics supporting the larger objective? And that can get you to the outcomes and the answers of, well, what are their objectives? Maybe their objective is simply to cause chaos. But those are the questions you should ask. What is your objective? And how does your behavior help get us across the finish line to something that I think we all want? which is a place where we can thrive and all of our communities are safe and all of our communities have space. Um, so yeah, we're trying to create health, we're trying to create harmony, and we're trying to create peace. And that is what I will continue to strive for. And I definitely appreciate every single one of you. I've gotten calls from elected officials from all over the state of California supporting and trying to intervene and trying to, de-escalate situations. And I am eternally grateful. What my ask is that you continue in this struggle because it is ongoing, and we keep our eyes on the prize, which is to create that vision of an Oakland and a Bay Area and a California and a nation where we all feel safe. That is the objective. And that's going to take some work because some people just don't want that. So if there are no other comments, Jyoti, we're going to um, call out what a couple more comments. Warren Chu is saying people need to ask themselves, are they part of the problem or part of the solution? Agreed. Thank you, Warren, for sharing that. It's good to see you here tonight. And Shay is saying calling out transphobia and non-binary and queer violence. That's also, everybody has a right to be. We all have a right to be. If I'm not messing with your stuff, don't come mess with mine. And let's figure out, for the people who are the most vulnerable and can't protect themselves, let's figure out what we need to do to keep our neighbors safe, because we are all on this rock together. And we only have a little bit of time that we're here. And I hope that we all use that to care a little bit more. I do want folks to be able to reach out to SEPTED. We dropped the link. If we could leave that again one more time, for their neighborhood or their business districts to do a community safety walkthrough with a checklist by our certified city staff. I'm happy to go with you. We will also be starting our weekly cleanups with our public works department and our trucks on March 4th. Office hours begin this weekend. If you are not online and you have not signed up for office hours and you want to talk to me directly, please sign up for our office hours, and let's figure out how to keep each other safe. We're going to have a full town hall in April, and we'll be able to have some like real serious conversations about what our city needs right now. We are probably dealing with one of the most complex set of situations that Oakland city government has experienced in decades. So I'm talking about a potential budget deficit, ransomware attacks, still reeling COVID and pandemic, and just all of the issues that go with that, challenges to our public safety. So it is not an easy time to be an elected official. So honestly, we need more support now than we ever have, than elected officials ever had. So please be patient with us. Please continue to work with us. Please continue to ask questions. I don't run from anything. Please continue to hold us accountable. Also understand that once again, this is serious what we're experiencing right now, and we need all hands on deck to make sure that we come out of this okay. So without further ado, I'm going to eat breakfast. I haven't had that today. And I appreciate everybody for showing up. We are all in this together. We have one city, one fight. And I hope that you all continue to support. And I look forward to making